This week, we're asking the important questions like, is it time to hit the panic button on PlayStation? This is the Good Game, Bad Game podcast.
This is a song I wrote about the Good Game, Bad Game podcast. Good Game, Bad Game podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Game, Bad Game podcast. I'm your host, Spencer. And with me is just about the only person who will care about this next sentence. Daniel Descalzo is the Cardinals' new bench coach. It's my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Danny Descalzo.
Fucking Daniel Descalzo, dude.
Dude. Right. I am the only one who cares. But, I mean, man, Danny D in his prime.
Nothing like some clutch Danny D.
Oh,
circa 2012
Danny D.
Playoff Danny
D. This is the Danny D that when Spencer had given up on watching a playoff game, got him right back in.
Yeah. The heroes of that game, I believe, were like rookie Matt Carpenter, who then ended up, being a really solid player for some years. And then like backup utility man Daniel Descalzo and worst shortstop in the league, Pete Kozma. And it's just like that is what our season came down to. And
Pete Kozma sounds more like the bassist on an 80s hair band than he does a shortstop.
Pete Kozma sounds like a slur of some type. Like it feels like you shouldn't call somebody that.
Frankly, is that the biggest insult in baseball? Is to call somebody a Pete Kozma?
Oh yeah, for sure. Check out this shortstop. He's a total Pete Kozma. Oh no. Oh man. How are you? How was your weekend games? You've told me that you have a wonderful story to tell.
I do have a really, really funny story. My weekend games simple. The game that should not be spoken. There was that, and then I played some Pikmin. I guess this is kind of a fun story. I played Pikmin with a Google Stadia controller.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you sent me that. You sent me like a snap of that.
Yeah. The Google Stadia controller is. I should rank my favorite controllers of all time, but it's got to be top 3.
Yeah, it seems like a solid controller. Seems like very comparable to like the Switch Pro controller.
I don't like the Switch Pro controller. The grips are just like too small. It doesn't really feel like my hands I can't get comfortable with it. But the Stadia controller, it's just like this matte plastic, first of all, which is really nice. It's kind of heavy, which I like. And just like they have the buttons curved a certain way that like your hand just fits so well.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And it works great. There's not really a ton of compromise. The biggest issue, and it's so funny, you don't realize how much this affects you until you have to do it, but the A and B buttons are switched. Because Nintendo does Nintendo things. And so even though like I don't look at my controller when I play games, the Pikmin control scheme isn't exactly like intuitive as it is for some games.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I have to like remind myself what button I'm pushing, and obviously that doesn't work for the Stadia controller.
Right.
But once I get into it and play for a little bit, I remember what all the controls are and we're good to go. But yeah, that controller, so nice. And all it took was a $20 thing from Amazon to make it work. So if you have a Bluetooth controller that you really like that you want to use on your Switch, would recommend.
Interesting. So I could use the DualSense controller on.
I believe that's one of the ones that works. It's my impression that it's any Bluetooth enabled controller.
Hmm.
So, like older, like the Xbox One controllers that came out at the beginning of that generation wouldn't work because those weren't Bluetooth.
Gotcha.
The ones that came out around Xbox One X time, and then of course like the Xbox Series, those will work.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can use DualSense.
Very cool.
I wish, and I understand why it doesn't work, but I wish you could like set up, like I wish it essentially just added a Bluetooth chip to the Switch. Because Justine has her Xbox Design Lab controller,
Mm-hmm.
but we honestly like when we play games or when together or when she plays games alone, it's mostly on Switch.
Right.
So luckily there's 3 USB ports on the Switch dock, so we could just get another one and be good to go. But yeah, works really well.
It's awesome.
So play Pikmin with that. Really need to play Cyberpunk. I really need to, but honestly, like Pikmin has just been the perfect game for the time I've been able to play video games.
That's great.
Week.
That's great. It's awesome. Like it's awesome when you like have something that just fits so perfectly that isn't Madden.
Yeah. And it's you know, you can basically commit as much time as you want to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't go into total depth with it, but it's nice. I mean, you can go and like collect things really easily. You can go do like there's like aves, I guess they call them, which are a little more time consuming, but you can leave those like midway, and then you can return to like any floor you visited. So that's nice. But yeah, love Pikmin. And then so my funny story for you, which is video game related. You're familiar with the band Joywave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they over the years have done many a video game soundtrack. I don't know if you remember the game. What was it? It was like a bunch of V's. Like I think the game was literally just like V V V V V.
Mm-hmm.
They did the whole like soundtrack for that game.
Okay.
They've been in a bunch of games since then. But and I actually I saw them Friday night. Because they are locals to a city that I live an hour outside of. And so I saw them in concert, and I'd actually just found out right before then that they had written 3 songs for Jedi Survivor.
Okay.
We're getting to the end of the concert, and the lead singer's like, "We have 3 more songs left for you. The first one you're gonna love. The second one you're gonna fucking hate. And the third one you're gonna love again." So they played the first one, which is like one of their really popular songs. And then they played this one, and they told the story about how they had to write 3 songs for this game. And he's like, all it is alien gibberish. And that's literally like they just like played instrumental, like a like synthesized instrumental, and it's just him making noises into the microphone. Like there's no words, it's just sounds. And this went on for like, I think he like combined all 3 of the songs that they did.
Okay.
It went on for like 8 or 9 minutes.
Oh my god.
And so this was a 2-night set. And we were at the second night, and he's like, "Well, I'm glad that we put another song after this, because last night we did this song last and everyone fucking left." And God, it was just so funny. I messaged you like as soon as they said that.
That's so funny. Oh my god. Did they play Dangerous?
They did.
Oh, great song.
Which I think was the first time I've been to 3 Joywave concerts now. I think it's the first time they've played it.
No way. That's got to be like their most popular song.
Uh, Destruction probably.
Oh, okay.
It's their most popular one. That's what
Okay.
they usually close with.
Okay.
But that's Dangerous isn't technically their song.
Yeah, it's technically Big Data, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they co-wrote it, but it's on Big Data's album.
But I feel
So,
like, you
Yeah.
did the song. You'd perform it, right?
I also never hear of Big Data doing anything anymore, so
Like if I was at a Weezer concert, which I so often am, um, recording Buddy Holly on my 3DS.
and all I hear is the riff.
um, I would love if I forget the fucking song that Rivers Cuomo did with Big Data. Pretty sure he did one.
Yeah. It was good.
Yeah, I would expect, I guess I wouldn't expect them to play that, but I wouldn't be shocked if they did.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I love how video games are seeping into other parts of your life. So even when you go to a concert, you can't escape it, and you have to listen to alien gibberish.
The last time I saw him, he was wearing a Dreamcast shirt.
Oh, there you go.
So
Big gamers.
yeah, they have a song about playing Nintendo. Big gamers.
Love that. That's awesome.
I would be interested to hear what. I'm guessing that was probably Sony BMG that had them record that. There's part of me that's like, I wonder how they'd feel about Joywave coming out and saying, "You're gonna fucking hate this song."
Well, I feel like it's like one of those things, right, where like sometimes you don't realize just how big video games are, right? And like we talk about how like the industry's booming and everything like that, but also like at the same time, like that's just gaming as a whole, right? Like, and then like individual games on like certain levels become so niche that like I would think the average person would hate a fucking random song out of a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so like it's like one of those things where it's like, why would people hate that? Like you're going to a Joywave concert. I'm assuming it's very much their sound. So like I'm assuming it doesn't deviate that much, maybe? A little?
The issue is like the sound is literally like
Nothing.
it's the music that exactly, it's the music that you would expect to be playing, like the house music you'd be expecting to be playing in between like Cantina band sets.
Play the same song. Okay. Oh my god. That's great.
But just a reminder that one, I still need to play the other game, the first game from that. What was that? Fallen Order.
Mm-hmm.
I need to play that, and I need to play Survivor.
Fallen Order is very good. I've been meaning to like do a second playthrough of it. It's a really good game.
Yeah, I started it on Stadia, so I'd have to restart. Which is fine. I wasn't that far.
Yeah.
But reminds me of a game that I'm just gonna need to go in and play on easy and enjoy the story.
Yeah, I mean honestly, like not that anybody needs to make excuses for playing a game on easy or whatever difficulty they choose, but if I can make one recommendation, that whether you've played the game before or you're only playing it once or whatever, playing that game on easy, because I turned the difficulty down when going back to like clean up, like exploring stuff and all that. You feel like such a fucking badass, which is like for me what I want when playing a game where I'm a Jedi, you know? So it's like it's still like super rewarding, even though like it feels overly easy or anything like that. Like it still feels so good. It feels right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and That's all I want out of a Star Wars game.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like, yeah. And like, I'm sure I don't know if I did any boss fights technically on easy. So I'm sure some of those will still prove to be somewhat of a challenge because you still have to like figure out like the timing of parrying and all that stuff.
Right.
Right. You obviously just get like a bigger window to parry and dodge and whatnot. But, yeah, it's a really good game. It's like it's so well paced. And I still haven't gotten around to Survivor. Because I think I do just want to play Fallen Order through one more time and then jump right to Survivor. But yeah, I mean it's so incredibly paced. The fights are so well done. And it's like it's just one of those like can't quite call it a Soulsborne game because it is much more forgiving. But like it has like that kind of setup where you have to like really learn from losing basically. And it's so then when you do beat a boss, it's like it feels so rewarding. It feels so good.
I just remember when I was playing that game, dying and having to have to go back so far.
Yeah, yeah, that is like the worst part about like all of those types of games is like the bonfire aspect where like if you didn't hit like a checkpoint recently enough, you're in for it.
Right.
Well, nice. I really don't think I have anything too exciting for my week. I've been playing just a ton of Stardew. Jump back into Shadow Warrior 2, which was a game I was playing like I think over a year ago. Um, just been trying to clean that up, trying to figure out my path to 69. And kind of getting nervous, getting up against the clock is ticking, and I think I have the path. Like I still have like Telltale games I could play. But yeah, I don't know. It's just not. It hasn't happened. So we'll see. We'll see if I have anything better to report next week.
Guess I'll just get the RMA label for this trophy.
No, I still have high confidence. Doesn't sound like it, but I do. But yeah. Otherwise, for my week, it kind of ties into the greater topic that we're going to be talking about, which is it time to hit the panic button on PlayStation? And before we dive like too far into that, I do just want to quickly give my little review of the PlayStation Portal, the remote play device that PlayStation released that requires you to have a PS5, does not play games natively, requires it to be connected to the internet at all times to be able to play your PS5 games not on the TV.
It's basically a Wii U.
It's kind of like a Wii U, yeah. So I will say this: a lot of people posted about bad connections and bad latency and stuff like that with, or like a ton of lag and things like that. Um, I'm not like super savvy when it comes to internet stuff. And like people were saying like, oh, you need to have this type of router and blah blah blah, and I'm just like, whatever, nerd, shut up. So what I did see was like one person was showing theirs and it had like pretty bad lag between what was happening on the TV and what was happening on the device. And then they showed their internet speed and it was like 300 down, I want to say. And I don't know if they showed the up or I just may not be remembering. And 300 down's pretty good, I would say. But I also grew up in Bumblefuck and had terrible internet, like less than a gig or not a gig. Oh my God. Well, way less than a gig. I had less than a meg for like most of my life. And the sweet spot was when I was getting 1 meg down. So I don't know. Currently I have gig. So my connection seems really good. And I don't know if it's simply that, like you really have to have like a top tier connection or what. I'm not hardwired into my internet. Like my PlayStation's not connected via Ethernet or anything like that. I'm also not playing all that far from my system. So other things to kind of take into consideration. And then I've also not had the chance yet to try it. I've been meaning to. I wanted to try it on my phone's hotspot, like connecting my portal to my phone's hotspot and seeing how that works. And then also just trying my portal on, I have a friend who lives nearby. So I wanted to like go to her place, put my portal on her internet and see if I can connect to my console and see how it runs. So those are two things that I haven't had the opportunity to try. And once I do, I'll update accordingly. I love it. I really, really love the device. It's like so funny because people are just like, how did the Wii U fail and all this other stuff? And like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. And I kind of hate how much I really like it. I've been playing Stardew in bed and it's amazing. And I haven't had, like I said, any issues with like lag or anything like that. I've like stood at my desk and like had my portal there and played, in between like a meeting or something. Like if I had like 10 minutes, I'd like pick it up and like do a level and something. And it's like, it runs really well. The best way I can describe it is I wouldn't play anything. Important's not the right word, but like important on it. So like I wouldn't play like Call of Duty, like anything like competitive, I guess is the better word. Like I wouldn't play anything competitive where like your timing is like super important because I haven't noticed it a ton, but I'm sure there is at least somewhat of a delay, and then you're also just running the risk in general. So I feel like that wouldn't provide the greatest experience. I'm curious. I haven't tried like MLB on it. I'm curious how like the timing of something like that, where you have to like, time your pitching and time your swings and stuff like that, and see how that works. I'm interested there, but I've been playing mostly like more casual games. So like Stardew's been something that I've been playing a ton on it. But I even was playing Shadow Warrior 2, which has like a ton of running around and a lot going on, and you're just kind of like slicing and dicing. And I didn't have any issues. I found an amazing use for it that is so fucking stupid that I'm willing to bet I'm the only person who did this. Are you ready?
Pooping.
What's that?
What?
Did you say pooping?
Yes.
No, I've actually yet to try it whilst on the toilet. And there's no way I would have been the first person to try that, Mike, please. No, so Saturday Shelby had a market, and so I was just at the apartment all by myself, and I was just like, I'm trying to get these platinums and stuff like that, right? And so one game that Shelby and I had been playing was 7 Days to Die. And there's a trophy in that game that you have to survive in a single player game for like 21 real life hours. And so I booted it up on the PS4 and I had it you can turn like zombies off and stuff like that. So there's like no risk or anything like that. And I just had my player up in the world standing, just letting time run, occasionally picking up the PS4 controller to eat and drink so that they stay alive, while playing Shadow Warrior 2 on my portal. And then to take it a step further, because we have a 2 TV setup, so I could have always just been doing that to begin with. We have a 2 TV setup in my living room, but that'd be kind of boring. So I was listening to podcasts and watching stuff and watching like TV and stuff on my other TV. So I just had the most nerd ass stupid setup going, but it was amazing. I was in heaven. And it was awesome. And so like that alone, I was just like, I love this device. It's perfect. But yeah, so I don't know. That would be like my I guess my final review. The final thing I would say to like put a bow on it is this is not for everybody by any means. The average person does not need this device, and I would say more so, most people do not need this device. However, I think anybody who likes tech, and certainly anybody who is like an extreme to the highest degree PlayStation fan, but to the point that they aren't willing to just have a second console, a second PS5. I I think this device is like pretty cool and potentially worth it to those types of people. But I think there's like a lot of like question marks when it comes to like how it's connected and stuff like that. So, you know, you got to kind of take everything. Everybody's experience is going to be just that, like their own individual experience. So you kind of have to like temper expectations a little bit there. Um, but yeah, certainly anybody who just like loves tech and stuff like that, I think this is a cool device. And yeah, but if any average person came up to me and was like, "Should I get the PlayStation Portal?" I'd be like, "No, do not buy it. Whatever you do not buy it. You do not need it." Like I would be like, "How many platinums have you gotten this year?" Like if they're like 100, I'd be like, "Ah, yeah, you might find some uses for this thing." But yeah, that would be kind of my final review. Is like, you know, I don't think it's. I certainly wouldn't play like anything that requires like a ton of reaction. So if you're somebody who just plays like battle royales and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, I'd be able to play these in bed, it's just like, no, I wouldn't. You're gonna be more mad than anything, I would imagine. But the device is pretty cool. You know, the biggest gripes remain, which is like I hate that it won't just like download games itself and be able to run natively. And I don't know what's possible in terms of like pushing out software updates and stuff like that to a device like this. I would love if they ever provided that capability. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I think I definitely obviously someone who hasn't bought it and really doesn't have a reason to. To take that for whatever it's worth. It's been good to see the feedback in terms of like people really enjoying it. Like I think the reception has been better than I expected it to be. I still think everyone's trying to figure out the why, but there's evidently some degree of a market for being able to remote play on Wi-Fi. I still think for me, I don't think I told you this story, but I was unexpectedly traveling a couple of weeks ago, and I was trying to remote play from my Xbox onto my phone where I was, and this was on Wi-Fi. And there was a couple other devices on the Wi-Fi, but nothing really insane going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not like it was just not worth it. It was just like the graphics were coming through very like um I don't even want to say pixelated because it wasn't even like I guess it's pixelated. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The lag was terrible. It like I would get like loading screens every couple of minutes. It was just not good.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, okay, well, my phone had pretty good 5G there. I took it off of the Wi-Fi and just played on 5G, and it was perfect. Like, no issue at all, which shocked me. That 5G would be better than Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi that I had at it was at my brother's house. Was good. I mean, I think he has gigabit.
He better.
And yeah. And it wasn't keeping up, and I'm starting to be curious because he has Google Nest Wi-Fi, which is what I have at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe it just struggles with being on the nodes and not just committing to one router.
Okay.
Which Nest Wi-Fi does have like a setting for gaming, but anyway, I have troubles with it at home too. Anyway, where I'm going with this is I won't be like impressed with these devices until they have native 5G.
Yeah.
Like, that's when I think they have a huge use case.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like if they add that, I will have less of a desire for games to be natively on there because
sure,
I think it'll just be better.
Yeah, and I will say, like, a lot of people have just been saying, like, I don't understand why you'd buy this device when you can just buy the like backbone attachment, right, and save $100. And that's fair, but I mean, I think the thing that people then forget is that like, well, the backbone plugs into your phone, so then you don't like you can't charge your phone while you have it plugged
Well,
in.
I think they do have a port on the bottom
Do
that you can
they?
do that.
Okay, cool. All right. So then that's on me for not knowing that.
Some of them. I don't know if it's every model. I think the PlayStation model, like the one that came out, I think that one does.
Okay. All right. Well then that's good. So that takes away that. But like it is a smaller screen, and I don't know, like I've done remote play on like my current internet and stuff. And this is while pooping, doing like market transactions and stuff. In MLB The Show. Real nerd shit. But
Literally.
it it didn't, like it would have connectivity issues, and it's like I'm real close to the console and everything. So I don't know, I was honestly a little nervous like getting the device, because I was just like, man, what if I just like cannot connect, what if it sucks? And it's been seamless. Like every now and again I'll get the like little globe at the top where it's just like, oh, can't connect, oh, we're having trouble, and it's like, and then it like kind of refreshes and like catches up, and that's it. And it's just like it's happened, I think it happened once each of the past 2 nights while laying in bed playing Stardew. So yeah.
I think there's two really inherent advantages that the portal has over a solution like the backbone. The first being your phone, when you're streaming to it, it's not the only thing that it's doing.
Right.
It's still doing everything else that your phone needs to do in the background. So that takes away from, put it simply, it takes away from the bandwidth.
Right.
So that's a huge disadvantage that the backbone has over the portal, because the portal is a dedicated device. The only thing that it is doing, in theory, is streaming your game. So it's not competing for resources. The other thing that I think the portal is kind of setting the standard on in terms of what people want is full-size controls and full-featured controls for the PlayStation, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that like the haptic triggers still work. I think there's accelerometers in it. So I think we're kind of learning that consumers don't necessarily want a device that fits in their pocket. They want something that works well.
And
I think having a bigger screen, full-size controls, I think that accomplishes that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I mean, I know I'm going to keep using it regularly. So it definitely fits somebody like me. But again, I know I'm not the average person, especially when it comes to like PlayStation, when it comes to games. So, when looking at like the general consumer market for gaming, it does still throw like the question of why make a device that is specifically like this, right? Like making a device that can run games natively, you're probably going to capture more people, just stuff like that, right? Which I think kind of brings us more somewhat naturally to like this next question, which is it kind of time to hit the panic button on PlayStation? This device isn't the only thing to raise question marks. There's obviously been the whole news that I don't know if we quite touched on, but PlayStation was originally supposed to, I think, have 12 live service games come out between now and 2026. They've cut that back to, I think, 6 games, which is still quite a bit. That's still 2 games a year, 2 live service games a year, basically. And that was a while ago. There might be an updated report there. So you have that. You have the issues that Bungie's having right now, which I don't think is necessarily inherently because of PlayStation, but it is still under their umbrella. And this most recent news that I think is extremely noteworthy, which is The Last of Us Part 2 is getting a remaster for PS5. There are plenty of things, and we can kind of dive into them all. But just surface level gut check, Mike, is it time to hit the panic button on PlayStation?
It feels like it should be an easy question, because like it just feels like they've started phoning it in.
Mm-hmm.
But they're having a leadership change. Um, for better or for worse, they're getting, I think, at least trying to trim down. Like, I don't know. We heard the Jim Ryan news, and then all of a sudden, okay, there's going to be less live service games. Um, Studios are maybe going to be a little more focused. Um, I think I'm going to hit the nervous button. I
Okay.
don't know that I'm in full-fledged panic mode yet.
That's fair.
I would like to see. I would like to be asked this question at like the end of second quarter 2024.
Okay.
Um,
I can try and make a reminder for that.
that might be a good thing to come back to because we might have a new leadership by then.
Mm-hmm.
More full-time leadership. I don't know if their CFO, if Sony's CFO is going to stay in that role or what, but I I think if Jim Ryan were still at the helm, I'd be hitting the panic mode button right now.
Okay.
I do think him leaving has eased that a little, but I completely see why somebody would be nervous about this. And to call out The Last of Us Part Two remaster specifically, I I just don't get it. It's like one of those things that you knew was coming, but also I would have liked to see this in like 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
when we're a little further out from the initial release and maybe people have figured out how to optimize the hardware a little better.
Yeah. I think I
Um,
agree. Like almost getting a little bit closer um to like the actual like tail end of the like current generation now would have been,
right.
it felt like a better time. But sorry, keep going.
No, but I'm sure they're trying to play on. Do we have a release date for that?
January, I believe.
Okay. So like they're probably trying to fill the gap between the Last of Us TV show and The Last of Us Part 2, the TV show,
Yep.
with the video game. Maybe they're trying to get the audience that the TV show captured into the video games so then they can be, you know, prepared for the second TV show. But that strategy would make me nervous. Like, that makes it seem like Sony is focused on a really successful TV show over video games.
Yeah.
And they're just going to phone in the video games and make them an adaptation of the shows rather than the opposite, which, from a video game fan standpoint, I think is the correct strategy. But I've been seeing screenshots, and of course, they're screenshots. They should be taken at face value, but they look like they're the same. I mean, The Last of Us Part 2 was so impressive on PS4. The fact they did that at the end of the generation,
Mm-hmm.
um, so impressive. And I'm seeing these screenshots and I'm like, what's the difference? I understand that like FPS will be better, load times will be better,
Mm-hmm.
and that's awesome. But when I see that and I see that like I don't know, you could put Halo 4 for the Xbox One into a Series X, same game that you already own, and it will be load times will certainly be better and it will be kind of scaled to at least look some degree of better.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me that you couldn't put The Last of Us Part 2 in a PS5 and it naturally be better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's more to unpack about The Last of Us Part 2 remaster outside of the surface level news of we're getting a remaster. Like one thing to specifically call out is that it is just like a $10 upgrade path. So if you already own it, it's just $10 and you get the like the next gen version of it, right?
Mm. Which is good.
Which is, it's not perfect, right? Like if I already technically own it, why not? But also games are now $70, so it does kind of cover that gap. It's better than having to
Sure.
pay full price. It's kind of like that middle ground of like, I'm not like thrilled, but I'm not upset, you know? Um, so there is that. They are adding a new game mode. I don't know if you saw this, where it's like a roguelike. You're going to be surviving like waves, and you get to play as like different characters, some outside of the actual like you play as Ellie and Abby in part 2, right?
Mhm.
So like you'll, I'm assuming, be able to choose from them, but then also like oh man, I can't remember anybody's names. Terrible, but the other characters from the fucking
Right.
game, like I'm sure Joel, Tommy, I'm sure you'll be able to play as them. Um, and so I think that's cool, and I'm really interested by that, and
Mhm.
intrigued to like see that, and I think that's awesome that they're like adding something like that. There's like um levels that were cut from the game that you'll be able to play. I think there's like commentary that you'll be able to get like while playing the game, I guess. I don't know, but regardless, there is like some cool stuff about it that like I am relatively excited about. But yeah, at the same time, it does feel like what you were kind of saying, where it's like, but why now? Like, are you really just focused on the show? It does feel like you're phoning it in, stuff like that. And I want to be clear when I say about like hitting the panic button, right? Like, just because a company is doing good and will continue to maintain that, or doing well, if I want to be grammatically correct, and they're going to maintain that, doesn't necessarily mean as like a player there isn't reason to be upset or panicked about what they're doing, right? Like I don't think Sony is, or PlayStation is, in any way hurting themselves. The optics for certain decisions may not be good, but like we still know where the PS5 stands in terms of sales. It's killing it. We still know that um uh that people like gobble this shit up, right? Like for all the hate and vitriol that comes from people when they hear about The Last of Us Part 2, it's still one of the most successful games in terms of like awards and like critics. And when it comes to the actual base of players who enjoy the game, they're going to come out and support it because they love the game. Hell, I know I'm going to get it, right? Like one way or another. I still haven't gotten part 1. But like I know eventually I'm going to get it, and I will contribute to the success of the franchise even more than I already have, right? So those are all things I think to like take into consideration. So I personally, and I obviously posed this question because I wanted to be able to say that like I think I would hit the panic button as the person who is looking at PlayStation and enjoys the games, and you know, has their own selfish like reasons, basically, because I know PlayStation is fine, and I don't think there's a reason to panic because they're suddenly going to like fall into a death spiral. I think they're just going to like fall into this rinse repeat of like phoning it in. There's really not a better way of phrasing it. And just kind of like going through the motions and doing the thing that is the easy thing and the easy path to success. A lot of people have been bringing up like Gravity Rush, and how they're upset that PlayStation doesn't like try weird games like that anymore. And this is to my point where it's like they're fine as a business because they don't make games like that anymore because people didn't show up to support those games in the moment, right? Like we love to make fun of the whole Days Gone thing, but it does ring true to some extent where it's just like that game, for its flaws, right? Like didn't deserve a sequel, but people want to get up in arms about it. And whoever the fuck it was who was just like, well, if you would have bought it full price and all that, it's like, well, if you would have made a
Mhm.
better game up front, then, but yeah, there was reason for people not to buy it. And whatever that reason may be, if people don't buy something, it's not going to get a sequel. So people didn't show up for Gravity Rush 2. And so, yeah, it is upsetting that PlayStation doesn't try any, like, they don't try to take any risks. I feel like Gravity Rush is like one of those games where it's like there's some risk to that, right? Like it's kind of out there in terms of its mechanics and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, I guess I don't really know. Maybe I'm rambling and don't know where I'm like quite getting to with that, but everything that they do is a good decision for their continued success, right? Like you know, cut copy Last of Us over and over again, and it'll keep doing good until at some point the well will run dry. But I don't think this is the decision that'll do that, right? Um,
What was like the last big new IP from a Sony studio?
I don't know.
And I mean like one that has done because what? I guess it was technically Square Enix. I was gonna say like Forsaken, right? Remnant? Was that?
I don't think those are PlayStation. I mean,
Maybe Remnant's not what I'm thinking of.
the like only new games that I can think of are like new IPs would be like Knack, and I wouldn't necessarily say Knack was.
Returnal.
Oh yeah, Returnal, Housemark,
Well, like,
Ghost of Tsushima.
yeah, I guess that was probably the last big one. I was gonna say Horizon,
Yeah,
but that was
Ghost
2018, I think.
Ghost was more recent than that. Ghost was 2020.
Okay.
Maybe Returnal. Maybe Returnal would be like a good one. I mean, a lot of people like, but there's a lot of revisionists to Returnal and how good it is. I feel like people were up front pretty happy with it. But I also feel like I see more good about it now than I did up front,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And that's not to say like they couldn't do like another game like that or whatever, but um yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like they take any risks anymore. And again, there's technically nothing wrong with that. And from a business standpoint, it's this probably more often than not the smart decision, right? Like people love God of War. Okay, well let's just make another God of War game, right? Spider-Man is obviously crushing it.
Mm.
So let's just keep making Spider-Man, right?
I just
Um,
feel like I'm not going to look back on the PS5 era and say, like, these are the distinctive games that made this generation. Like, you can do that with every other PlayStation generation before. But in terms of new IP that had staying power, like, I know, Returnal is a new IP, but I don't think people are, one, I don't think people talk about it right now, but I think when we get to the PlayStation 6, people aren't going to look back and say, yeah, Returnal was that game for the PS5. That new
right.
IP that really drove the generation. You're going to say, oh, I played Spider Man for a fourth time. I played The Last of Us Part 2 for a second time.
Mm-hmm. I played both
Um,
God of Wars. Yeah. No, you're
right.
100% right. You're 100% right.
And sure, like, God of War Ragnarok was something else, great game. And I think that can be considered a defining game. But, like, that's where I start to panic in that we've seen the end of new IP for at least a generation. Maybe PlayStation 6 will start seeing more. Um, and don't get me wrong, I'm not in the boat of pushing new IP for the sake of pushing new IP.
No, certainly not.
I I just I don't know. I've heard rumors now that Naughty Dog is going to be working on a new IP now that they're kind of giving up on The Last of Us Online. Um, that would be cool. Um, I don't know. I guess I would like to see Insomniac do something other than Ratchet and Clank or Spider Man since they've already had one of each of those this generation.
Wolverine, baby.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. They have Wolverine, so maybe they're out of the question. Sucker Punch. I imagine if they're making another game this generation, it's going to be Ghost of Tsushima.
I would imagine.
Um, just fine. I mean, I feel like that is the outlier here. Like, I feel like a second game there could be a defining game for the PS5.
Sure. I think like you were kind of saying, Ragnarok was kind of that, right? Like,
Right.
you know, it was the second game. It ended that arc, and it was like this whole like beautiful epic and everything like that, right? That obviously all these games do well critically too, right? And like that's another key factor, right? So like again, you can't blame them necessarily for like not going out on a limb and taking risks and kind of just taking this like easier route to success. But at the same time, the walls start kind of closing in and you're just kind of like, okay, but like push is going to come to shove at some point and they're going to have to do something new. And I'm starting to like, that's where I think starting to panic, where it's just like, are they even capable anymore?
Right.
And that's obviously very extremist. And like, of course I'm sure are, because, whatever, but it does feel like, um, are we going to be too conditioned that like we're just playing God of War, Spider-Man, Last of Us, Horizon, and Ghost of Tsushima, and Ratchet and Clank, right? Like, so that's 6 games, right? That's 6 franchises that I just listed off. But it's just like, are we just going to be playing those games for the rest of time? And like, anytime a new game comes out, it kind of like provides a lot of friction, and like you kind of push back against it because you're like, oh, it's not one of the 6 games though. It's like, oh, it's too different and all that stuff. I wonder if they put themselves in a situation like that too, where then they try something new. It's just like, oh, well, see, you guys don't like the new thing. So Spider-Man 4 coming soon,
Right.
Oopsie. So that's where I think my panic starts to kind of set in. It's just like, are they even capable of like having a Last of Us moment? Having a Ghost of Tsushima moment again, where it's just like, holy shit, wow, this is console defining, this is genre defining, this is a whole new experience, this is gaming defining, and changes the landscape of what to expect from a game like this. Are they still capable of doing something like that? And I do start to worry a little bit.
Yeah. I guess the next hope is Marathon. But
I just don't think a
there is
live service game is going to be a defining game.
is that definitely going to be live service?
I would imagine, right? It's like an extraction type game now.
Oh, okay. It could be. I can't quite remember. Yeah, I agree with that.
Which I think, like, don't get me wrong, like, I think like Destiny 2, right, is like a pinnacle of like what you would want from a live service game, right? Like they did that extremely well, and I think that was like, again, like it was a genre defining moment. And so yeah, I think like, okay, could it be something like that? Maybe. But I just can't ever envision being like, oh man, the PS4 Apex Legends defined the PS4 experience. You know what I mean? Like I just can't imagine ever even hearing somebody say that, right?
Hmm.
And there are obviously people who like do just play battle royales, and NBA. So I'm sure somebody out there exists who would say that, but yeah, I don't know. I just like I find it hard to believe that that's going to be the thing that instills a ton of, and that's personal bias too. But
Right. I mean, we are, I think, both in the camp of Sony has always made the best story-based single-player games.
and I still think that rings true.
I agree, but there was, yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of personal bias coming into this for me because, like, I just want Sony, like, I want to be back in the Sony days of, like, yes, you've got your Uncharted's and, like, your Resistances and your Kill Zones, and there was, um, 4, 3, and 4 of those games.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, having sequels is nothing new. And I get that. But, like, at the same time, there was new IP all the time that was good. It was exciting. They
Mm-hmm.
marketed it well. They didn't say, yes, you are all going to play 4 more Uncharted games, but also here's this. It was just like a completely different entity. Um, yeah, I feel like that excitement's gone, and maybe it will never come back. And that's something I just need to grow out of. But that is the thing that I felt made Sony special. And if that's not how they're going to be, then I personally just don't have a whole lot of interest in that ecosystem anymore.
No, for sure. And like I think you bring up a good point where it's like, yeah, technically sequels aren't a bad thing, right? But the games that you like listed, and like you think back to like the PS3, right? The PS3 alone had 3 Uncharted games.
Mhm.
right? And then like that's just one console generation. And yeah, the PS4 did technically have two Uncharted's, but like Lost Legacy was not technically a full like Uncharted experience, right?
Right.
Um
Great game, but
yeah, oh
yeah,
yeah,
not.
amazing. And it's like yeah, it's like it captures the Uncharted experience so perfectly, and it is truly an amazing game. But yeah, you like look back and um so you have like the Uncharted's, right? Like I can't remember. I think there were like 4 Ratchet and Clanks or something like that on the PS3. Plus they put out like the Ratchet and Clank collection
Mhm.
of like all the PS2 games, which the PS2 had I think like 3 or 4 Ratchet and Clanks come out, right? So like there was like a ton of volume. Like the PlayStation exclusives dominated your volume of games in your library, and it doesn't feel like they do that anymore, right? Like because and like I get it, games cost a lot to make, and more time and effort is going into them to like make them as polished as possible and all that stuff, but you know, you it takes time in between getting games. You know, the PS3 generation is 7 years and you fit 3 Uncharted games and The Last of Us um all within that generation. Uh and then you look at like the PS5 and it just feels like there's so much more of a gap in between everything. If it feels like anymore, you're like, oh, I hope this developer I like gets at least one game onto the console before the generation's over. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll treat you to a second one at the tail end. It's just wild,
Yeah.
and that's
And
a more sweeping change to game like to the industry in general, obviously. But
what's amazing to me too is that not only were they developing tons of IP for PS3 and PS4, but they're also developing great IP for PSP for a long time.
yeah,
And in the years that it existed, the Vita.
yeah. I mean, Gravity Rush started out as a Vita game.
Yeah, and there was tons of great games for the Vita. And I guess now you can make the argument that they are developing for PS5 and also PSVR. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know. It's I think it's just kind of like the death of PlayStation as we knew it. And to us, it may not seem like a good thing, but they must
And
have their reasons.
and that's 100% kind of my point, right? Like to me, it is time to hit the panic button. But again, this in no way is anything that they're doing truly, I think, spelling the like end times and like the dark ages, right? Like people love to like point out the bad optics of PlayStation constantly, of which there is, right? Like they do so many questionable things, yet they still sell like freaking hotcakes.
Right.
And at the end of the day, that is really all that is going to matter to them. So, you know, until like there's actual like sweeping unity amongst gamers rise up, right? Not derogatory. Until people like truly vote like with their wallets and all that stuff, right? Like people are doing that currently and they're paying for these things. And so that's just reinforcing their decisions, which
Well,
again, when you look at it from a business standpoint, those are then the right decisions. It's just to look at it from like somebody who, yeah, like has always loved PlayStation. Yeah, it does make me a little like sad to see, I guess, the old PlayStation start to fade.
I think that there's so many definitions of gamers now too. And like for you and me, who have always grown up with gaming, and the culture of these companies that are making these games or these consoles was always important. Like it was always something worth keeping track of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the leaders were always so visible. We always had E3 and people coming out on stage, and You knew the names of the people running these companies, and now we just kind of moved into, okay, we don't really need a front man anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need somebody that's relatable. We just need to pump these games out, put together a sizzle reel, and then ship it out there and not talk, because now we don't have any of these personalities and nobody wants to hear anybody talk anymore. And so they can kind of hide behind these like asynchronous events, uh, and have a more corporate structure and just kind of suck the fun away. And for people like you and me, that sucks because we pay attention to these things still. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
everyone in games media, they pay attention to these things still. And that's why Xbox has become so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Is because, of the personalities, Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer, people genuinely like these people. But you get so many gamers who are just like, okay, I'm gonna get a PS5 so I can play 2K, and oh shit, I fuck with Spider-Man. I'll pick up Spider-Man and
Yeah, and that's
things
enough.
like that, and they don't care. Cool, another Spider-Man game. I like that the last time. Like, there's got to be some sort of intelligence on players don't want to like discover new IP. They want to play the games they're familiar with, and they'll buy it every time, and they'll enjoy it. And that's our model. I think we're seeing with Sony that they can do that right now because they had so many generations of success. Whereas like Xbox, we kind of still have the old school, like, these people are upfront talking to gamers because they haven't, in my opinion, had that generation yet. I don't know if it's too little too late, but yeah, it's just changing tides, I guess.
Yeah. And maybe we're like old man yells at clouding this, or maybe I am, I
Yeah.
should say, at the very least. But
Oh, I am. I mean, this whole generation, I've like not
like,
wanted to get a PlayStation because it's not what it was.
yeah, and it's like
me.
it's like jarring to some degree. But I thought this was great. To kind of like talk these things, to get through like the feelings and the emotions of it. You know, again, I think everything that they're doing is technically, from again a business standpoint, they're making the right decisions.
Right.
But doesn't mean that I'm necessarily through the roof about all of them. Yeah. Anything else to add about PlayStation? Anything that we missed, didn't get to hit on?
No. Yeah, I'll be interested to have this conversation next July.
All right, we'll pencil it in. Well, then thank you all so much for listening. Let us know your thoughts on PlayStation. Are you hitting the panic button just yet, or you think this is par for the course? Who cares? It's fine. Shut up, Spencer. Let us know in the comments. As always, if you could leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to the podcast, it'd be greatly appreciated. And if you could do us a favor and share this podcast with a friend, family, this could be a great thing to talk about during a Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, hey, I've been listening to this new podcast. Grandpa, you might be interested in it. It's about video games, and then they can relate to you. It's great, family, all that good stuff. Other than that, that'll do it, and we'll talk to you next week.